And first, I thought it was a kind of this obscure, random thought because the image was so bizarre. And I'm not into scary movies or anything like that terrain. So it was just like, gosh, where would this thing? And really what it was that memory now was coming back at 20 years old. And then ultimately over a short period of time, I had the horrific experience when I was at the tipping point in which I had to accept the fact that what I was remembering was a reality and it happened. And I had a complete physiological reaction. And yeah, it's it still impacts me today. It does. After all the fair,
Imagine, right?
yeah,
Like, let me ask
yeah,
you, David.
sure.
Because I know we touched on this as a man and as someone who grew up in a time where it wasn't something you necessarily spoke about. It was something that was like this person said, right? Okay, we don't share this. It's just part of the process. And one thing I was thinking about while you're sharing that is psychologically, you're telling the person that you're telling the child, sorry, this is normal. It's like a rite
Mm,
of passage, right?
mm.
Like, David, you have to go through this because of that, right? So I know you touched on the way you view yourself and specifically how you view your body. So now, when you look at yourself all these years later, what is it that you see in the mirror, in the shower, at the gym? What kind of person do you see?
So what I will first say is that the majority of most every day, I never look in the mirror. Never. Unless I have to shave, I will, terrain specifically, I will not look in the mirror. And I hate, it's interesting. I hate to be naked because I loathe my body. And yeah, in, if I look at my entire life, I've been on the planet for 6 decades. I've never been able to accept my body. Never. It's, and I'm a fit man. I work out on a regular basis. I'm height weight proportional. And, I tell people I'm 61 and they're like, there's no way in the world that you are 61 years old. And I take good care of myself. And yet terrain, when I look, I can't stand what I see. I can't. And, and
Why do you
all,
think that is?
it's a great question, man. I don't, so I don't know. I don't think I literally have ever been asked that
Like,
question.
why do you think that when you look at yourself in the mirror or anywhere else, like, why do you think that you hate yourself? You hate your body, you hate what you see?
That's a great question. I don't know if I've ever thought about that. Um, you know what? Maybe terrain. It is that, and again, I've been blessed with extraordinary therapists. I see my therapist Tuesday at 8 o'clock. By the way, and this will be one of the things we talk about. Um, but I've seen this beautiful man for many years. I wonder. So, and I'm going to answer your question with a question because I don't know the answer to your question, and it's not about avoiding. Please no, it's not that in any way, shape, or form. I wonder if because there was a disconnect in what I was feeling um, physiologically, and I think also for a man, for me to be sodomized, that I don't know if there's a more like vulnerable spot, on my body than there. And the level, just the sadistic nature of the acts. So I wonder if I certainly I have memories of while the act was going on, disassociating, like, quote unquote, checking out. So I wonder. Do I still do that now? Is hatred a form of disassociation? Because if I look in the mirror, if I could actually stand in the mirror, and I've had people, people say, okay, do some mirror work and look in the mirror and say, I love you and everything else. I'm like, you know what? I can't do that. Try. I mean, I try, give it a try, but let me do. I can do a lot of other things, but so I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe the hatred is a form of disassociation because in that moment at 12 years old, I couldn't accept what was going on. Like, oh dear God, and yeah,
I
it's
know,
just,
yeah, I know some of the women, if I would take it there, who speak about sexual assault or sexual abuse that have shared it with me, because those are the type of people I speak to. They share something similar, and many times where when they try to get intimate, they can't do it with the lights on. Always has to be the lights dark, has to be
hmm.
lights off, pitch dark. They don't want to see themselves, right? They're a real person. They're not, there isn't a stunt double coming in and performing the act, right? It's actually them.
No, I get
But
it.
the you get it, right? But the concern is now your body is supposed to be, to a lot of people, your temple, because you only get the one.
Hmm.
So if you can't love the one, if you can't love the external, then what do? Do you continue to always cover it in hopes that no one sees what it is that you see? Like, if you ever seen that movie like Shallow Hal, right, where the person sees the woman as something else, where she's actually a larger woman. And my concern for people who suffer like that is mentally, it's such a taxing way to live life. And you've also mentioned that you suffered um suicidal thoughts, and you've had those conversations within yourself. Do you feel that somehow that they're both connected in that way?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, not only did I have suicidal thoughts, I had a suicide attempt. I mean, I thought about killing myself, train. I mean, 10,000 times. I don't know. I mean, just yes, I absolutely think it's all part of the same package. But you know what's interesting? And I think you and I talked about this a little before we recorded that at the end of last, so I'm really compliant when it comes to like self care. I am really good at it. So I've never missed a day of medication. I've never missed a therapy appointment. I go to support group. I do all the stuff. Like I'm really good at it. And at the end of last year, Terrain, I fell into a place of depression, the worst I'd ever had in my life, which made no sense because it's just like, wait a second, but I'm doing this. How can this happen? And my two North Stars, it's my beloved fiance, Summer, and my eldest brother, John, who's always been, since our father died, he's 11 years older. He's always been my dad, like literally. So my two North Stars got me into a new therapy. Some people know of it, some people don't. It's called ECT or electroconvulsive therapy. So shock therapy. And there's a tremendous amount of misinformation and fear and stigma and everything else. People are just like, oh my, but what I can tell you, I've had 32 sessions in the last 7 months. It has changed my life. It is unbelievable. And I mention this because it's interesting. You brought up because your questions are so amazing. While I can't accept, don't like, albeit hate what I see in the mirror, ECT, along with everything else, has allowed me to have probably at times some of the best relationship I've had with myself, which is kind of interesting. So my hope, and I have not had this thought until being in the blessed presence of you, maybe because ECT will continue, maybe because it's done all of this, and I can tell you more and more if you want, but it just done amazing things. Maybe it will get me to that point that there'll be a time that I could stand naked in front of a mirror and be like, you know what? You're okay. Which would be like, that would be, oh my God. I just like, I think it'd be easier to fly. It would be, but
Yeah, especially when you gotta get to that place. Because let's be honest, there's many people who maybe didn't go through what you went through who don't like being naked in front of their mirror.
yeah, yeah.
You know, I remember a time where I was getting dressed, and my girlfriend at the time, I was changing, and I kind of was like hiding, but it was second nature, right? Where you're like you're just protective of certain parts of your body because that's like your defense mechanism, right? You don't
Mm,
want someone to maybe shame, you don't want someone to, because you don't know. Sometimes we don't remember what we went through as a child until there's a situation you're like, wait a minute, why am I reacting this way? Why is my body telling me, okay, ding,
mm,
ding, 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 the defense up, right?
mm,
And I wonder for you, because I was bullied as a kid when I was very young and I was young and I was skinny. So when I went to the gym, it was a way for me to protect myself, become
right.
stronger, become whatever, right? So I'm looking at it and hearing your speak. I'm wondering, okay, is it that David, who doesn't like his body, one of the ways to make his body the way that maybe he wants it to be so one day he will love it is to train it, is to make it look stronger, make it look fitter, make it his own body. So in a way, you're like, okay, I'm taking back my power through the gym, through the health, right? And now you have this, as you mentioned, you have this fantastic support system in your fiance, right? Like how important of a role is she playing in
Oh,
your life and helping you overcome this trauma?
oh my God. It's like, and my former wife, was married before. She was equally great, and we're still really good friends. I'm gonna give Deanna credit, but if I look at Summer, interesting. You this will make you smile, Terrain. My beloved, who's younger than I, just finished grad school, and she's a school psychologist. So mental health is like rampant in the households. I mean, in fact, it was interesting. So Dee and I never had children. Summer has three beautiful souls who live with us, and so they're now my children. And it was interesting. I was talking to my daughter, my youngest daughter, and I we had some great, just some special one-on-one time together. And I was sharing with her how great. I said, mom has this ability to make observations and then share them. And in all the time that we've been together, I can literally never think of an observation that wasn't like right on. Like I don't necessarily want to hear them. Like you know, like like, but she's always right. And they're never the other part. Once I get past sometimes my own immaturity and madness and all the other goofy things, that make me a human being. They're never told to like put me down or belittle me or it's always to support me. So long-winded to try to tighten it up. Terrain. I mean, Summer is just she knows better than anybody the specifics of my suffering and will help me with that. And that's such a beautiful thing because there's a quote that I use in my talks that says, to not have your suffering recognized is an almost unspeakable form of violence. And you're like, oh my God. When you hear certain things and you're like, yes, I don't have that problem. Summer knows the exact nature, the specifics of my suffering.
Did you think that you would ever be able to find that type of support system when you're go at the early stages after you experience that situation?
Oh no, good Lord, no. No. No, no. No, I think, I mean, and it was for a bunch of different reasons. One, I never thought that I'd live this long. I never thought, if you had told me then I'd be 60 years old, I'd be like, Terrain, you're crazy. I'm not going to be 60. Good God. And then, okay, all right, if some by miracle chance I was, there's not going to be anybody that's going to want me. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you're talking nonsense. Like, oh God, no, yeah. And so it's just, I mean, there's Terrain at every part of my life, and I'm not saying this to be illogical or overstated. At every part of my life, there is an extraordinary human being. Like every part. There's not one part like, oh, it's good here, but you got every single part. Like my therapist, who I will see on Tuesday. I love this man. I know he loves me as a son. Like I know how much he cares for me. And he's my psychiatrist, for God's sakes. Just, I don't know how many people are blessed to have that kind of relationship with their psychiatrists. And I tell them all the time, I say, Dr. C, I love you. It's just like, man, it's just what that man has done for me, just like incredible.
You
And I
mentioned
don't
something, David, that I want to touch on. You mentioned that you didn't think you'd live to be this old or this age. What are some of the reasons why you thought that you wouldn't see the age of 61, which these days isn't really that old?
no, let me tell you what, at 61, it does not feel old. In fact, I have an incredible friend of mine who's an acupuncturist. Who I love this man. His name is Jerry. He just turned 70. I looked at him and said, one, you don't look 70, because when I think of 70, I'm like, but this is Jerry. So I'll tell you. So I know. So if you look at genetics, kind of like dry, like kindling, like tinder, you're going to start a fire. I got that from my dad, absolutely, and my grandfather. So then I'm raped and sodomized at 12. That's the match. Boom. So my hellness begins at 12 years old, and then it continues. And there's you don't two quotes. Maya Angelou says, "There's no greater agony than bearing the weight of an untold story." So I'm carrying this weight for a very long time, and doing life and everything else, and people have no idea. Deanna and I got married, and then trained at one point. So Dee and I got together. We ran a nationally recognized end of life animal sanctuary that was unreal. It was incredible. But people in a million years want to think like, David's depressed? Like, you got to be kidding me. And see, then what on leading up to August 31st, 2011, ultimately what I believed on that day when I tried to kill myself was I was worthless, I was stupid, I was useless, I was ugly, I was pitiful and grotesque, and the world will be better off without me. And there's a famous chef, David Chang, and he fights bipolar, and he has this extraordinarily perfect way to describe depression. He says, when you're depressed, you're convinced that everything you think is true. And you're just like, oh. So what I believed on that day was like, well, it's not going to be a big deal because everyone's going to be fine. They'll be like, oh, thank God David's gone, you know? And an important distinction, because it is true what I understand the vast majority of the time that I'm like most souls who get into that horrific place of being suicidal, that I didn't want to die. I wanted my pain to end. And what I believed to be true was the only way to end the pain was for me to jump off a 730-foot tall bridge. But thank God I was saved.
You mentioned, David, compliance. Do you think you not talking about it was you being compliant? And do you think you ending it this way was being compliant in a way that now I'm no longer a burden to myself and to others because of what I went through?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because at the end, the other thing though, and I talked to a friend of mine recently who says, really as soon as you mention it, you out yourself. Even if you ask a question about it, you out yourself. And at that point, Terrain, I believed so much about myself. And then the older I got, and this kind of circles back to something you said a little bit earlier, the older I got, it was, why didn't I try to fight back? Why didn't I try to run away? Why didn't I, all these things that, I, not, but the older I got, the more I shamed myself. And that's probably really that's the most corrosive emotion of all.
I think a lot of people who are abusers go through that because it's either you fight, either you flee, or either you freeze.
Yep.
And many of us, in hindsight, will always ask the question, why didn't I fight? Because maybe they didn't expect that they would actually freeze. But you don't know what you're going to do until you put in that situation, especially when you're defenseless as a child, especially when someone is taking your power away. Because when I look at what the men go through, that must be even more devastating because we're told that we're so strong, we're so powerful, and now we have someone else taking away that power.
Mm.
And we're hesitant to talk about it because, like you said, we don't want to out ourselves because there's going to be a sense of shame, maybe a shame that comes from us, maybe a shame that comes from others. Are these the type of thoughts that you had after a number of years as you enter adulthood and then you started to get these memories and you're like, oh my goodness, how am I going to not only deal with the act now, but I have to relive it through the memories that I'm experiencing?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, was always the other part. And I don't know if everybody's like this when it comes to depression, but one of the central themes, the ingredients in my depression train is acute self-hatred of the complete being, body, mind, and spirit, and including like, well, gosh, you know what, like, you know what, you're a wimp. You just laid there and allow all this to happen. You know, you're not worthy of this. And you know, if people knew that that happened to you, they would never even want to talk to you. So it was, and it you know that the problem was that I because of for me what happened to me physically, like, and even now we've talked about this, but especially in the period that you're talking about, I can't forget about it because I can't forget about my body. In other words, I can't check out from this. If I check out from this, I'm going to be dead. So it's, yeah.
So, David, as we look to close, what are some tips, or better yet, what advice do you want to give those who have suffered a type of abuse and they're holding it in this inside themselves, but they're trying to figure out how to deal with it? What advice you want to give to them as we close?
I'd say terrain first. What my suggestion would be is to find a person to share your story with. But when you do it, when you do it, set up the circumstances. And to the person, it would be, hey, I have something that's really important for me to share. It's difficult for me to share. I've not shared this before. I don't need any advice. I don't need any suggestions. What I need from you, if you would please, is to just listen. Please do that. Please, please do that. That's the single most important thing that you can do as an initial step to let some of that out. And then ultimately for me, I'm a huge fan and have benefited tremendously from from therapy of all types with psychiatrists, with psychologists, group therapy. I've done ECT, I've done all kinds of things. So whatever works for you, but just the initial first step, share, but set the circumstances up. Just ask the person, I just need you to listen.
Thank you so much for that, David. And I want everyone who is suffering out there to take his perfect words of wisdom and understand that you are not alone. Always look out for the support system. And David, one more time, let my audience know where they can find you before we go into our next guest.
Absolutely. So davidwoodsbartley.com, 916-247-6389. David at davidwoodsbartley.com is the email address. I would love to be of service, individuals, coaching, organizations, anything. If you need a listening ear, I just want to help. That's all I want to do.
Thank you so much, David. I look forward to our next conversation. You have yourself a fantastic Sunday, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you, my brother. It's been amazing.
All right.
Have a
All the
great day.
best.
All right. Likewise. Thanks, Terrain.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, everyone. That was a beautiful, beautiful session. Lots of wisdom there from David himself, who has been through so much. And at the moment now, we're going to bring in our next guest speaker. She goes by the name of Stella, and she is going to help us overcome some of the pain that she has gone through or she is going to be sharing. So I'm going to bring her in right now. Stella, are you there?
I'm here.
Hello, Stella. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Just putting on my camera here. Uh, yeah, it's
Perfect.
I'm in Sweden, so you can really.
I want to say thank you so much for your flexibility. For those who may or may not know, we had some power outages where I am, but we are back. And even though I can't do it any justice, Stella, please take the mic from me. Introduce yourself, tell my audience a little bit about yourself, and of course, where they can find you. I think you're on mute.
And with my
We can
drone.
hear you now.
Well, okay. Right. So I'm here today, and I thank you for inviting me and for having the possibility to introduce myself to your audience. I am I'm Swedish. I live in Malmö. No, I'm Swedish American. My father's American. But I really feel that I am European. It was when I studied in New York that I realized how very European I am. I was born with a disability, which is called clubfeet, and that is part of my traumatic experience through life. And from there, I became a dancer. I'm also an opera singer. I'm an astrologer. I have been working as a Gestalt therapist for 30 years and a coach. And now I'm also just a person. And you can find me on LinkedIn, which is really the best place. If you want to connect with me, you can find me on Facebook and on Instagram, but LinkedIn is the best place. And I also have an app which I launched about 6-7 weeks ago, which is called Cosmic Strategies. Yeah, that's my intro.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I know when you shared with me, and we're going to get into this now, you mentioned that there was some medical interventions that were pretty traumatizing. So, was this a part of you growing up or experiencing disability, or was this something else that led to it for you?
As I mentioned, I was born with club feet, which means that the Achilles tendon is too short and the feet is turned inwards, and they cannot grow unless you do some kind of intervention. So when I was 18 days old, they put me into plastic casts and they had to sedate me with narcosis. I was very lively and I was kicking around a lot. And usually when it's not too bad, the feet will adjust and within the plastic cast, and so they will start to grow out. They will never be like regular feet, but they will like start to grow in the right direction. Mine did not. So I was put down into narcosis every third to fifth day for my first 6 months. And with those plastic casts up all the way onto the thighs. And then they realized, okay, this is not going to help. So they did the first surgery. And of course, plastic casts again. So I went through that until I was 7. I learned to walk 5 times. And the doctors said, put the child in dance school to help strengthen her feet. So my mother did. And I was talented, but I had these non-workable feet, so to speak. So classic ballet was really not the thing. But I was dancing. I went to dance school 3 times a week. And at that time, I'm 65. So when I was born, 1959, they still thought that babies don't really feel. They don't really have a memory. And you could commit surgery or do things without sedating. because it would not affect you. So it feels like ancient times. It's like, what? So that is what people thought, and that is what they told my mother. And she believed them. What would she? I mean, of course she did. I mean, they should know better, right? But the thing is that we do remember, and we remember the body really carries the burden of everything. Even when we come to a certain, I don't know exactly when, but they know that when we are in the wound, we react to things when we get to a certain age. I don't know when it is, but that memory that we carry in our bodies cannot be dismissed. We cannot pretend it's not there. But what I did is I just pushed it away. It was because it wasn't there. So I never spoke about it. I never talked about it. I never said anything about all the pain, because it was painful to walk. Everything was painful, but I never spoke about it. I just suffered through it. And this thing of becoming a dancer is also the way I look at it. It's like, okay, yeah, you compensate. You try to compensate. So I did, but it really it tainted my relationship to my body in many ways, because I saw myself in the mirror in the dance studios, and I didn't measure up for myself. So it was also a question of like the actual physical pain, the physical memories of what I had gone through, because surgery is torture. And this is, I've never heard anyone say this, and I did not realize this until I was in my late 50s, that I went through 7 years of torture. And I'm so grateful, and I'm especially grateful that I was born in Sweden, because that meant that the medical care was paid through taxes and had nothing to do with what kind of money or insurance you had, or all these things. And had I been born and grown up in the States, I probably would not be able to walk at
Yeah, if
all.
I may, Stella, like I'm in Toronto, Canada, and our health is paid through the taxes as well. And as someone who hasn't gone through this, I begin to realize as I hear your story how many times we take walking for granted as people who can go through it. Because I just get up and I go. It's not something that I think about on an everyday basis, but you and the way you describe it is that you had this situation, club feet, and you knew something was different. And being different at such a young age for a lot of people is disheartening. It's traumatizing in itself. We don't want to be different when we're kids. We want to fit in. We want to be with our friends. We want to look like our friends. But here you are, you're different than everyone else. It's impacting you in a way that many of us take for granted. So as you look back on your childhood and you realize, as you mentioned, it was 7 years of difficulty, 7 years of torture. How do you think it's impacted you in your life today to see what it is that you went through back then?
When I went through my training to become a Gestalt therapist, it's 4 years. During that time, I realized that there was something about it that made me this experience that made me very strong, very resilient, and that I was capable of going through all kinds of things and just do it, which in a way can be really good. But it also made me push parts of me away. So there were certain things that I wasn't able to experience because I pushed myself out of my body. And that I had an extremely strong experience of coming back into my body. I had like a spontaneous regression. It just, I fell down on the kitchen floor and it just happened. And what I realized then was that I had, in a way, I left my body, and with that experience, I started to experiment with like going out and coming back in, and going out and coming back in. And when I was in it, I saw colors in a different way. I experienced smell in a different way. It was like life was rushing on towards me in a way that I had never experienced before. And also some of my muscles in my body, down in my legs and around my thighs, were like swelling up, not in a painful way, but they were like something happened there. So I could like it was I could touch it. It was like I don't know. I can't explain how it was, but it was so evident that my body had not expressed certain things and had not been able to imbibe certain things about life, because it was so important to stay out there, because if I was in it, there were so many aspects of life that was too painful. And one of them was like the actual physical experience of being put out, up and down into narcosis, the plastic cast, the itching, the not being able to walk, all those things, being carried around in the baby carriage. But it was also this thing of what my body looked like and how I experienced it in front of other people. So I really had to bring myself home to myself in a very new way. And this I had already gone through lots of therapy, and I was a professional therapist myself. But the thing is also that when I went through that the training, we did not know or talk about PTSD the way we do today. I mean, things have evolved. We know and understand things about trauma, PTSD today that we did not know then. So when I was trained, I understood that, you know, it was painful and all kinds of things, but there were certain things that we did not have any training for because we didn't know. And today there are also modalities that I have been trained in, like energy psychology, where you can like bypass certain things so you don't speak so much. Gestalt therapy is not really a talk therapy like psychoanalysis. You don't like talk. That doesn't work. And that's also why I did not become a talk therapist. I felt like this is not for me. I want something to be deeper and deal with what's really going on. But I still could feel like, it's not enough. And my clients, I think this is also an important part. My clients came to me and with incredible traumas, incest, sexual abuse, physical abuse. Most of them had been on drugs. I had a lot of people from the 12-step programs. And I did not understand, because I did not have that. I did not understand what it was that made it easy for me to believe their stories and just work with them. And I had excellent results. And I was like fresh from the oven, out 4 years at the Gestalt Academy, and they just gravitated towards me. And I said, okay, let's try and see what happens. So what I realized then later on, when I had this profound experience, is that because of that torture, I could relate to their torture, but I did not get caught up in it because I did not have that kind of experience. So I was free, so to speak. I did not have to deny anything. I did not have to be fearful of my memories. I did not have to pretend that what they had experienced was not true. I could just be in it because my body knew what it was like to be abused and penetrated with knives and those things. So, it's I must say, it feels like a very complex thing to try to express here and now, but it's a big issue. And I also think that we're still in the beginning of talking about trauma and understanding what it is, because what I've also understood is that for a 4-year-old, you know, dropping your ice cream on the beach, and then, you know, your parent get like irritated and says la la la, you don't get a new ice cream, and that's traumatic for a 4-year-old. So there's like shades of being traumatized.
No, and I will say that there's something you mentioned, and this is what I lead in with my life. When I look at you, when you share your story and how you can relate to other people's traumas, I think that's probably why a lot of us do the work that we do, like me, you, and some other people, right? Because like I hear your story and it reminds me of a time where I was going through some difficulty and I was traumatized in a different way, right? Like early stage bullying. But then you hear people who are sexually assaulted and you say, okay, their power was taken away. And it reminds you, oh, yeah, I went through that. Even though you didn't go through exactly the type of trauma they went through, there's a connection there because you see a piece of yourself in that person. And for me, it was like, I don't know if you ever watched the movie Django Unchained. It was like that. Like I went through this traumatic experience and then I got revenge on everyone else in a way, in a sense, right? But you're recovering from that and you're using what you went through to assist others because as you mentioned, right, you can say, I can relate to you. I can relate to what Stella went through. I can understand what Stella went through. I may not be going through it directly, but because I have my own pain, I'm like a kindred spirit to Stella. So when you are speaking with the people that you're assisting and when you're looking at your own experience, how much of yourself do you see in the people that you work with?
Well, I think that's part of the reason that I was so successful is that I did not see so much of myself because my trauma was different. So I did not like hook into them. And that left both them and me free to do what needed to be done. So the connection was not because of the trauma. The connection was because I was a human and they were a human, and we could meet that way. So being able to meet someone where they're at, instead of hooking into their pain with your own pain. And so I've had so many clients that have come and said with these kind of issues, and they did not get help because someone said, "Oh, are you really sure? I don't really think it." Da, 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 da. So, and that is because this is just my theory. I think that is because something was touched within them that was painful for them, and they could not handle whatever it was that they were pushing away. But the things that I was pushing away had nothing to do with that kind of abuse, even though it was physical. It was done in a way that was meant to aid me for real, and I'm so grateful. I mean, it's like I'm so grateful, like I have no words. But at the same time, I had this pain. So because I was not emotionally invested in my pain, I could be with them in a much freer way, and they could trust me of not being entangled in whatever was going on, because I could, so to speak, not relate to that particular issue. And I think that was really, that is what I have seen and felt later, is that is what made me so suitable for the work I did.
So I guess my next question would be that, so what are some of the ways that you would assist people today, or maybe what are some of the ways they can look to assist themselves to help them through some of the experiences that they're currently going through?
The first and most important thing is you can't do this by yourself. It's impossible. You need help. I would not be here today if I had not had help from therapists and coaches and healers and shamans and all kinds of beautiful people. But this thing of helping yourself, that does not work, because whatever we do, wherever we are, we create everything as a survival mechanism. And if I survived by something, I will not ever, ever, ever let go of it unless someone from the outside will look at it and say, "You're looking in this direction, but sweetie, it's there." And they will fight you because they have survived going in this direction. And this I know from my own experience. I'm not going to look in this direction. I'm going to go here. And then someone says, "Stella, you got to look." So it's just when you go there and you need help, you need help. You cannot do it by yourself. I have not seen anyone being able to do it by themselves, because sooner or later you will get stuck. It doesn't mean that you need someone there all the time, but eventually you will get to a point where you will need help for a while. That can be 6 months or 6 years, I don't know. And then you will have a period where you can be like on your own and integrate. And then you will come to a new point, because we do not move in straight lines, we move in circles. And then there is this idea that you can, reach your full potential. Well, I'm not even sorry, but I call BS. It's not possible to reach your full potential, because if you reach your full potential, you will disintegrate in little light particles and just move to the next dimension, whatever you're going to do there. So I think we always had this the spiral, and most people have come to a point where it says, okay, no, I'm done with, I've done this job, I've done this work, I know, so I'm done here, okay. And then you get to a point where like, holy cow, why am I here again? I thought I was done with this, with my mother or my father or my teacher or my bullying or whatever it is. But you get to a new point. So you're never at the same place, but you go to a new level. And if you want to call it higher or deeper, doesn't matter. But it is a spiral. And the spiral is a sacred cosmic movement. We're not on a planet that is like stationed in cosmos. It's moving in a spiral through the universe, while all these planets around are moving together, and we are moving around the sun. It's all moving in a cosmic spiral, and we are part of that spiraling, also in our emotional, spiritual involvement.
So Stella, as we close, let my audience know one last time where they can find you, and any tips or programs you want to share with them.
Yes, you can find LinkedIn is the best place. You can also find me as Stella Scott, the Queen Coach is what I call myself on LinkedIn. I do live sends there where I talk about astrology and personal development, or Facebook, Instagram. I'm not there as much, but I am there. And I work mainly with women 40 plus in leadership positions. So I have this app that is new, and that is a good place you can download it. It doesn't cost anything. On App Store or Google Play, Cosmic Strategies. And the last thing I want to say that I find so important and that people don't hear enough is there's nothing wrong with you. Whatever you have been going through, whatever you are going through right now is about survival. There's no such, this is like there's no such thing as self-destructive behavior. Does not exist. Because everything you do is always to survive as well as you can, according to your circumstances. And all this talk about, I do this and I have these horrible voices in my head and I'm mean to myself. No, you're trying to survive. Then it turns out to look like and be self-destructive. I mean, if you go for drugs, yes. But that's not the original urge. The original urge is to survive. And therefore, there's nothing wrong with you. And there's no such thing as self-destructive behaviors.
Thank you so much, Stella. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to our next conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All the best.
To you too.
So that was about trauma, everyone. And I know there's so many of us who experience trauma in different ways. And support is one of the best things you can do when it comes to that. And that brings me to our next guest, who is going to speak to us about her insights, what she has gone through. But as always, I can never do the introduction better than they can. So Whitney, hello, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing, Terrain?
I am well. You look very happy, big smile, and everything is going well for a Sunday so far?
Yes, it's going fabulously well.
Perfect. So start us right off. Do me a favor, please. Introduce yourself, tell my audience a little bit about yourself and where they can find you.
Yes, it's such a pleasure to be here with you. And I have been through so much in my own healing journey. So it feels like many lifetimes within this lifetime. I practice now as a full-time holistic health practitioner and clinical herbalist in Western Virginia, and close to the Washington, D.C. area. And that's been my full-time job for 9 years now. And I specialize in women's health and especially hormonal balance. Work with everybody from all walks of life. And I particularly work with a lot of complex health cases. And just with that inherently comes often a history of very difficult or traumatizing experiences, but supporting people to work through that in a really grounded and safe and compassionate and non-judgmental way so that they can heal and thrive.
Perfect. So, what got you started in this type of work and why?
Yes, great question. And it's certainly a big one. I feel like the universe really directed my path. And there's just an element of surrender and saying yes. And the resistance created more suffering. Right? So I feel like for me growing up, my early childhood years were actually very happy. I know that that is not a common story per se when you've been through extremely traumatic experiences, but I can reflect on that and just a lot of solidity in my early childhood years and a very loving family. And so I felt like in my teen years, I had a lot of life ahead of me. I had a lot of possibility. I felt very vibrant and healthy. And in college, in my second year, I became very sick. There were several things leading up to that. Like there were a lot of what I would say, red flags as far as my body starting to have really unusual new symptoms, and that just really kind of going under the radar for a while, and then that just building to the point of um, becoming so detrimental I needed to take medical leave. And then it became really a battle for my life for many years. And I was so confused and lost when I was diagnosed with a life-threatening neurological condition. And so my life changed overnight with that, and I really couldn't go back. I feel like that can be perhaps a common thread if you've been through any kind of, traumatic or challenging experience. It changes you. So I matured in a lot of ways, and I lost a lot of people, but I gained a lot of people as well. I really found out who my friends were. And then I was already on a really deep spiritual path, but then it became number one to me. I mean, I was just all in as far as like, okay, if I'm still here, and I don't take this for granted, this is very fragile right now, just my daily existence. Okay, let me try to make the best out of every day, and let me really look for anybody that might help to support and work through this. So either way, I've done my very best as far to, trying to co-create with life and hopefully find some meaning throughout all of that.
The body is something that is so tricky. And I think that's like the theme, to be honest with you, Whitney, today, where you have people who are struggling with their body at different points in their life. And we don't ever want to be too different. And by too different, I mean that you want to be as healthy as possible. You want to, in a lot of ways, fit in, even though you still want to stand out a little bit. But when you're going through something body wise, as you mentioned, in a way, it can make you realize who really is there for you and who isn't there for you. Like there's like my girlfriend, she mentioned that when she was going through her issues with her like back and the pain that she was going for, there was people that they didn't show up the way that maybe she expected them to. And there are some other people that showed up in different ways. And anytime you hear someone who loses the support that they're going through, you hear them say that, well, this person wasn't there for me in the way that I thought they would be. And sometimes I ask myself, and I'll ask you this as well, Whitney, is the expectation that we put on people to support us, is that something that we put onto them, or is it something that they earn? And the reason why I say that is because if we put an unrealistic expectation on someone saying that, you know what, Tony down the street who has never supported me, who has never helped me, but I'm going through something and I think Tony's going to help me, but he doesn't. The expectation should be that he doesn't help me because he's never shown an interest to help me. But that's still traumatizing to us. What are your thoughts on those types of situations where we put expectations that we know on people that we necessarily shouldn't, and as a consequence, we get traumatized because now we feel isolated, we feel alone.
Hmm. Yes, I think that it's something that can be, case by case with each relationship, and that there can be a lot of new awareness, after something challenging happens. And um, I feel like for everybody, extend a lot of compassion for wherever they are. And sometimes people just cannot show up for whatever reason. And I used to take offense to that if it's somebody I felt like, oh, we're really close. And I think it was mostly for me, people that always wanted to be there during the happy times. And it was just like, okay, we can always, have joy and light and laughter. But then when something hard happened, just like completely exited. And that really taught me about who I could and could not trust. And then I found some people, they just didn't blink an eye and they were unconditionally there for me no matter what. And that really gave me a reason to trust them more deeply. So I don't hold that against them. I see that that's where they are, but it just helped me set some healthy boundaries where I was like, okay, that's not somebody that I want to choose to be in my inner circle that can really fulfill my emotional needs.
Was that difficult for you to accept that reality and accept that type of mature response?
Oh yes, it was very difficult. I mean, at the time it would be heartbreaking if I was very close to the person. And some people are like, oh, I think they're my sisters. I'm going to be friends with them for life. And then kind of like the world shattered down and I realized that that just couldn't be possible. And I don't give up very easily. I mean, it takes me a lot, if I feel like, okay, I need to put some boundaries up. And so, but when I saw that, if it's somebody that I feel like was even harming me. Sometimes I think I really didn't see that. I had more rose-colored eyes before really kind of owning what I did see. And it's like, okay, if that's not something that's supportive for me, they don't really care about me. If they don't want the very best for me and love me, then that's just really not something I need. So it's gotten easier over time. And I think now I'm just a lot more discerning with maturity and life experience. Yes.
It's like you were in love with the thought of what they were, but not necessarily with the thought of, not necessarily with who they actually are. And I give you credit, Whitney, for coming to that realization because there's a lot of people that they will tolerate that behavior and it continues to cause them pain and pain and pain. When you're looking back and there's some of the people that you work with, some of the people that you see, um, how difficult is it for you to see them going through that, reminiscing of what you went through, but you ultimately know that there is a happier place towards the end of that journey?
Yes. Well, I'm a highly sensitive empath, and I have been my whole life, and I had to learn how to take care of myself first as part of my healing journey and recovering my health. And that's something then I feel like I can share with other women. And so I see that pattern a lot where it's like, okay, I might be placing somebody else's needs ahead of mine. And if it's not reciprocal and life-giving, then I can see that very clearly from a distance. And it's always respecting people's choices and readiness for where they are and what they're looking to see. But I do see a lot of abusive situations with a lot of women today, and I think that's kind of the larger collective culture in women's health. Once you start, going beneath the surface and you see how oppressive things are, you really have to take a stand for your health and wellness and healing, and advocate for what you need. Otherwise, you might just let other people kind of walk all over you, even unconsciously.
Is that difficult for some of the women you work with to do and to recognize?
Very difficult. Yes. And I sometimes there's only one person in your life, that's really believing in you and advocating for what you need. And I sometimes feel like I may be the only person in a woman's life at that time. Other women have been that for me. And then also try to encourage them to build their circle. And it really, building up this incredible village of people that genuinely love and care about them and creating opportunities for that. But yeah, it's a huge blockage. And I spent a lot of time initially in my work with women on consciousness shifts and embodying more self-love. And once you start to value your innate worth and you protect your soul and this light that you have and this incredible miracle that we're given every single second, then you can make more conscious choices as far as what you need and activating self-care. Yes, that's a very common theme that I see.
I wonder if many women who suffer from that is because so many women, as you mentioned, right, they're so in tune more so than, let's say, for example, men, when it comes to that connection, that emotional awareness. They're empathetic, they're sympathetic, they're a lot of cases, a lot of times they're like people pleasing, right? They want to make sure that everyone is around them is happy at the expense of their own happiness in many cases. So when you have them experiencing a type of trauma and they're searching outward and the person isn't available, I wonder if you see women saying that, oh, it's okay that they're not there for me. I'll figure it out. But they don't ever figure it out because there's always someone else that they're trying to help. And then they neglect themselves. Do you see women neglecting themselves even though they're still reaching out for help, but they're like, oh, it's okay, I'll find another way. And they just totally ignore what they're going through.
Yes, that can happen, and it can be very hard to watch for sure. And again, just supporting people with where they're at and what they see. Ultimately, holding space for them to not harm themselves and not let anything that will harm them. And anything related to that is a place of growth and inner work. And I think sometimes we can all numb in so many ways, right? And to really look at deep sustainable healing is going to mean looking at pain and unearthing it. And so we can kind of externally project. It could feel more comfortable that way, or live in a victim mentality. Ultimately, I think those are dead-end paths. They will not work. But those can be like temporary crutches just to kind of get by or keep living in denial.
So, what are some of the tips that you share with the women to get them out of that denial period, the victim mentality, into a progressive and ultimately a better way of thinking about their situation?
Yes. Oh, so many tools. And I take a highly customized approach with each woman. And so generally though, I find like almost everybody needs support around healthy boundaries and learning how to listen to and feel into their heart. Usually there's a lot of veiling or wounding there that then disconnects with what their own inner voice is truly saying. And when they start to tap into that, they feel the radiance of their own natural heart field and how that's a beautiful thing and something to cherish and protect. And then their radar is much more sensitive as far as what might be disturbing that. And then they're much more able to bring in consciousness as far as, okay, what can I let in, or what do I need to create some kind of lifestyle choice or change things up so I'm not letting that in consistently.
I look at myself in that situation, and there was some difficulty for me to understand why people did what they did to me
Really.
in a way, right? Because I'm pretty sure you see a lot of the women that you work with, or maybe even yourself, where you would think, okay, why is this happening to me? What did I do to cause that? And then, as you mentioned, there's some of the tools that you can use to get yourself out of it, especially if you're working with someone. Because I'm a big advocate of not trying to do everything on your own,
Mm-hmm.
because it can be overbearing, it can be overwhelming, it can be somewhat difficult because maybe you don't necessarily have the tools, or maybe you're not aware of some of the tools that are out there that could benefit you. Do you find that some of the women that you're working with have a more individual approach to it, and you have to kind of work with them to get out of that and say, hey, you can still do certain things by yourself, but let's work together to walk this path in unison?
Yes. And I feel like for every woman, especially if there's been a history of trauma, when trauma happens, it tends to speed up time and you feel out of control. And so me, several long-term goals that I have is to get out of the stress response, like fight, flight, or freeze, and activate a lifestyle that's supporting a sense of safety and rest and healing, ease of digestion, easefulness. And that might be a very long time ago where like, oh, you've just kind of gotten used to just feeling like I'm in this, the surreal and all, everything is so speed up. And so it can feel startling, I think, to get out of that. And so I always want to hold space for them to feel like they're in control. And I'm there 100% unconditionally loving them every step of the way in their own timing. So it's going to look different for every single woman, but eventually we will get there. And that they feel like they can be comfortable with like this slow, steady pace again. Right? And that silence is something that's nourishing for them and that doesn't create a fear response.
It's like that saying that like one day was it 1 hour is like 1,000 days, right? Because everything is moving at high speed. Is it similar to that where it's like everything is just traveling at light speed?
Yes, exactly. And in my own personal experience, I mean, I feel like all of a sudden, after a traumatic event, it's kind of like this becomes like this space that I'm living in and I can't get out of it. It's like I'm stuck there and you can uh almost have amnesia about other life experiences. And I found I stayed in there for a long time. It's very difficult to work my way through that, but it was the best decision I ever made to just keep looking at healing, working through it. And then now on the other side of that, it's like this small glimpse in the past. Like I can really reclaim all of these beautiful and nourishing memories again, which I had previously forgotten about. So yeah, changing the brain, changing our neural pathways, and like the body really can heal itself. And I think it's incredibly important to reach out for support, to feel like you're not doing it alone, especially for women, because I think there's a lot of sensitive men for sure, and there's such a range there. But generally, I think we're more hardwired for that like emotional need and support, and we get better healthcare outcomes quicker if we have a strong support team.
When you're going through your trauma, and was there a point where it became like the new normal where you're living in it and everything seemed like, okay, this may be my reality if I accept it?
Yes, absolutely. And I didn't want to accept it. I was like, no, like, what can I do to get out? And that just didn't work. And it was a lot smoother to really accept, what had happened. And in layers, right? I'll do this bit at a time. And then from that place with the surrender, even like, okay, I've completely bottomed out and it can't get worse than this. So maybe something beautiful happened out of that. I had an art teacher years ago in college, and art became extremely healing for me as I was, really deep in my healing journey, even more so than it already had been my whole life. And she would often tell us, she'd be like, don't be afraid to make a magnificent ruin. And she would just try to challenge and push us. And I just love that perspective on healing, because I feel like letting okay, I made a magnificent ruin, but what if that was the very thing that helped me expand and change my life and embody more fullness? And I truly believe that now. Yes.
It's like it's a whole new, and I don't want to quote like Aladdin, right? It is literally a whole new world that opens up to your eyes, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it can sound cliche, but it's so true. 100%.
Yeah, I look through like my self growth and it's a little bit similar to yours, but maybe a bit different. But mine was I was going through some difficulty in my life and I didn't understand where my life was going to take me. And I literally, Whitney, stood in front of the mirror and I said, Terrain, what is it that you like about your life? I just said it. No writing down, no pre-planned. I was like, what is it that you don't like about your life? I said the same thing. And these are conversations that are like near tears conversations because it's not physical. It's not saying I wish my hair was a little bit longer. I wish my nails was done. I wish I didn't have much hair on my arms. I wish my muscles were a little bit bigger. They eventually got bigger. But these are some of the things that you had to say because it's strictly personality based. And I had to realize a lot of what I was going through that was causing me pain, trauma, I could actually change. I had to give myself back the power Is that something that you experience, or maybe some of the women that you work with experience, where you're saying that I've given up too much power? Let me take some of that back and make myself a better version of myself.
Absolutely. And I feel like there's a level of self accountability, you know, on all of our paths. And to a certain extent, I think trauma is just part of the human experience, but so is healing. And I feel like that's our birthright. And so consciously choosing that, and, you know, no matter what has happened, that there is always healing available. And you know, discerning, okay, what's mine and what's theirs. Like, to be a lot more like confusing, but okay, but what's mine is mine. Like, I can change that. And you know, yoga and Ayurveda saved my life, you know, 1,000 times over, many, many times, and still does. It's are very big tools for me. And you know, mantras, healing vibrations and songs are something that I've been doing a long time. And positive affirmations, you know, it's the same idea. So those are daily practices for me, and they're still absolutely game changing. So yes, yeah, changing my mindset and surrounding myself with high vibrations, and also like looking at the vision, where do I want to go? And really speaking that into truth, so that that becomes more and more of my reality.
So as we close, Whitney, let my audience once again know where they could find you and the programs available that you have to help them further.
Oh, yes. Well, please keep in touch if there's anything I said today that you might want to follow up on. If you have any questions, any way I can support you, please reach out. I'm a woman doing business, very collaborative. So I promise I'll help connect you as best as I possibly can to somebody that can. And so I am, you know, full-time active in my job. I'm the owner and practitioner at Four Seasons Harmony, Holistic Health, Healing, and Ayurveda. There's a website, fourseasonsharmony.com, that you can go to 24/7 and find lots of community resources and a blog. And feel free to follow me on Instagram, join my newsletter list. And I would love to get to know you better, see how I might support you. So you can apply anytime for a one-on-one session with me. That's completely confidential as well, if that feels right to you.
Thank you so much, Whitney, for that. That'll be all in the notes. And for those who need assistance, please reach out to her. She has a world of wisdom. And Whitney, I look forward to our next conversation.
Oh, I very much look forward to it too. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a joy to be with you.
Thank you for your wisdom, and I will speak to you soon. Bye,
Okay,
Whitney.
really good pair. Bye.
So that was another way to help each and every one of you overcome trauma. And the beautiful thing about that is there's so many people who are suffering, so many people who need assistance. And one thing that I want to share with each and every one of you is that you don't have to do it alone. You can do it with the support that we are sharing today. So that brings me to my next guest, Alma. Alma's going to share how to overcome adversity. Alma, are you there?
Oh, yes, I am.
Welcome, welcome. So I've been talking for a long time today, and my guests do the introduction a lot better than me. So do me a favor, introduce yourself, tell my audience a little bit about who you are, and of course, where they can find you.
Okay. My name is Minister Alma Thomas. I'm an author, empowerment speaker, motivational speaker, a grief coach. As I said, I'm a ordained minister, and I'm also an author. And if you notice, I am laying down today, not because I'm tired and it's Sunday afternoon and I'm just relaxing, but 3 years ago I suffered a massive stroke that rendered my right side paralyzed. So I do these podcasts and seminars from my bed.
Perfect, perfect. So thank you very much for joining us today. So you mentioned that you went through a stroke. When did that happen, and what was the impact initially when you suffered it?
I had a stroke April 23rd, 2021, where they gave me a 99% chance of dying and a 1% chance of living. The doctors had called my family to my bedside and said that if they wanted to ever see me on this side again, they would have to rush to the hospital. The nurse offered to hold my hand while I transpire, but I did not feel like this stroke was unto death because I have asthma, and when I can't breathe and they're saying I'm barely breathing, that they wanted to place me on a ventilator, but I felt like God was breathing the breath of life into me, and he had me on his own ventilator. So I didn't believe the doctor's report. And initially, I had signed a DNR because I was like, okay, if it's as bad as they're saying, and they're telling me if they put me on a ventilator, it's still a 99% chance that I won't wake up. So I said, well, if I go, just let me go. Don't try to put me on any artificial breathing advice, but and devices. But I did not believe that it was unto death.
So when you first heard that news and they gave you such a dire diagnosis, right? And they said all these things, Alma. What was your thought process in how your life was going to be versus how you expected it to be?
Well, as I said, on April 23rd, when I went to bed, I had all kinds of plans of what I was going to do on April 24th. And what that experience taught me is that anything that you want to do, don't put off for tomorrow what you can do today. Like if you want to go back to school, you want to write a book, you want to write a song, you want to buy a house, whatever it is that is your purpose in life, you cannot put your purpose on pause. And what I discovered is the cemetery is full of unfulfilled potentials, dead dreams, and visions. So don't die with your purpose inside of you. And sometimes we go through some bad chapters in life. I've been through many, many bad chapters in life, starting in 2009 when I buried my son. And after the first big thing that had an effect on my life was burying my son. So once I found out that I could stand in the cemetery and see them lower my son's body in the ground, there's not nothing that I couldn't overcome and live through once you live through something like that. So even when I had the fire and I was homeless for a while, I was able to do it and go through going through the system and them placing me in a bed bug motel and me only being able to stay there for an hour. And I came back to my mom's house and she has a 1-bedroom senior citizen apartment, and me and my daughter had to, stay in there until I found some place to live. I got married. I thought I had found Mr. Goodbar, but I found out I had married a snicker. He was addicted to crack cocaine, and he was in denial that he was addicted. So you can't help a person that's in denial, and you want to help them more than they want help. So I ended up getting the divorce, taboo in the church. And also I forgot to say that after my son passed away on February 13th, 2009, that his birthday was April 17th, 2009, his first birthday in heaven. And I was going to unalive myself, not because I wanted to be unalive, but because I wanted to spend my son's birthday with him. I said, I wonder if the angels are singing happy birthday. Is my grandma baking him a cake? And I said, for 17 years, I have made my son's birthday special. So this birthday should be just as special because it's his first birthday in heaven. But I know that there is a God, because just as I was about to put the pills in my hand, I heard a still voice say, if you do it, you'll never see him again. And I cried and I cried and I cried. And I said, God, I don't know how I'm going to make it through this. And if you know anything, especially 15 years ago. If you know anything about mental health in the African American community and church, they say like, therapy is not for us, it's for other people. We don't tell our business to other people. What happens in this house stays in this house. It's all in your head. You can get through this. And the church I was going to church Sunday after Sunday with the same issues, and I was leaving with the same issues, just a little bit oilier for them slapping all that oil on me and saying it was gonna be all right. And even though I'm a minister and I know to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord, that my spirituality was all right. But the mom in me was hurting. The mom in me was suffering. And people were saying, "You're so strong." I don't know how I could have went through that. And people were saying, he's in a better place. And I'm thinking in my mind, I know he's in a better place now and he wouldn't come back if he had to. But then the better place, I'm thinking like, okay, if he's in a better place, why don't you let your little Johnny or your little Susie go to the better place? And then tomorrow, let's have this conversation again. And you will see if you think they're in a better place, or is the better place in their bed or at the dining room table, places that I'll never see him again. And
Yeah, Alma, let me stop you there for a minute because there's a lot that you shared, and I want to mention to you that I 100% agree that a tragic situation can definitely change us in so many different ways, especially when it's health related. And you made a fantastic point where you mentioned that this is what I expected from my life, but this is where my life is going. And I think what gets missed from those who are looking to support people is we say some things that are very disingenuous or in some cases rude, because we would say that, well, to your point, this person is in a better place, but wouldn't everyone want to be in a better place? So if you truly believe that wherever it is, my son, my daughter, my loved one is in a better place, would that better place be somewhere where you want to go to, or would you want a loved one to go to? And then that's where the conversation seems to be a bit different. So for you, when you're looking for the support to the left, to the right, from the church, from outside of the church, were you surprised at who wasn't supporting you versus who was supporting you?
Yes, I was very surprised, especially in the church, because I was like, can't they see that I'm hurting? That on the outside I'm trying to smile, but on the inside I'm secretly dying. And people are so busy telling me that I was strong that they didn't see that I wasn't really strong, that I had to go through it, but I wasn't really strong. And that's why I had to make a choice, and against the legalism, the stigma that mental health has, I had to talk to someone. And I went to EAP, which is the mental health part of my job. And we talked through things and what triggered me and what emotions I was really feeling. And we talked about the stages of grief. And I knew the stages of grief because I majored in psychology in college, but it's quite different to know the stages of grief and actually live through the stages of grief, because I had to figure out like why one minute I was at acceptance at the final stage, and the next day I found myself back at denial again. And I had to realize that there's no expiration date on grief, and nobody can tell you how to grieve, because grief is an individual thing. It affects people in different ways. And it's okay not to be okay, because your mental health is just as important as your physical health. And if people tell us, oh, I'm on high blood pressure pills for medication for high blood pressure, we don't tell them, oh, you got a spirit in you, don't take them pills. But when somebody tells you that they've been prescribed pills for mental health, depression, anxiety, panic, they say, oh, that's all in your head. Don't take those pills. and you're like, your mental health is just as important. And that's why so many people in the church and in the African American community now are starting to commit suicide, and people in the church don't think that they have anyone to talk to because people are gonna judge them. Like
So
just
Alma, let me ask you, what is something that we can do as people who go to the church, people who are part of specific demographics where mental health isn't discussed, right? So like as we close, what's some advice, some tips that you want to share with those who need assistance to get through it, but maybe it's something that is not necessarily practiced in the church or in their own home?
that education is the key. We have to let people know that it's not either or. It's not either Jesus or therapy, but just like God has equipped the doctors to take care of you, psychologists are equipped to take care of you, and that the church should educate the pastors and the ministerial staff to be able to say, we can't do it all. You need to talk to somebody. You need to talk, it's not a personal attack on you, that this person needs more help. These illnesses are real. Depression is a real thing. Panic attacks are a real thing. Anxiety is a real thing, and sometimes you can't pray it away. And people attempt to, and they can sink deeper and deeper into depression until you wonder, why did Pastor so and so take his own life? Because he felt that that was the only way out because of the stigma attached to mental health. So education is the best thing that we can do. Educate ourselves, and um not being okay is okay. It's okay to say that you need help, you need somebody to talk to.
Thank you,
Um,
because I will 100% agree with that. I think, and that seems to be like the theme of today's summit is there's help out there, seek the most appropriate help for you. And if
Right.
there is people out there that isn't helping you in the way that you would want to be helped, go seek help from someone else. So Alma, thank you so much for sharing that fantastic story today. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you for inviting me. And I want to just say one more thing, that when we were children and people would dare you to do something, and you would tell your mother, I did it because they dared me. Well, on today, a double dog dare your audience to dream again, to reach in deep inside and dream again, no matter what circumstances, situations that you have been through. Your current situation is not your final destination. God bless.
Thank you so much, Alma. And you have a fantastic rest of your Sunday. I appreciate that.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye. So that was well done, everyone, because that seems to be like the theme is reach out, understand your support system and who can help you in your time of need. If I may share, there's many times where I've gone to people who I thought was going to be there for me in the way that I needed them to be, and they weren't there for me. So was that an expectation that I inappropriately placed on themselves, or is that something that they actually earned? So the question has to come back to you. What type of help do you need, and where can you get it from? And there's so many resources out there to do so. So with that said, I'm going to bring our final guest on by the name of Lainne. This is someone that I've known for a little bit. We're like best of friends now, and I can't wait to have her introduce herself. So, drum roll, please. Lainne, how are you doing today? You're on mute.
There we
Oh, there
go.
you go. She was on a little bit of a mute, but there you are. How are you?
How I was
I think you're a little lagging today. Is it me or is it just you? So I know we've had technical difficulties here in Canada, everyone. Our city was under siege and we've had a few power outages. So Lainey is going to be joining us shortly. I'm just looking forward to seeing her. Let me know when you're online and ready, Lainey. You're on mute. Maybe if you come back in and join again, that may help. So we're just checking out a little bit of our sound, guys. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this moment to just reiterate what is going on with our team today. So we want to make sure that if there's any support that you guys need, reach out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of the contact details of all of the guests today and yesterday's session in the show notes. So make sure you check them out. Don't suffer in silence. If you have thoughts of trying to do it alone, you don't have to. There's people out there like myself, like many of our guest speakers today and yesterday, who are more than willing to assist you in your time of need, because that is the key. The key is to identify that you need assistance. That is a big first step. The second is to seek out those who can assist you in the way that you need to be assisted in. I think sometimes when we go to people, they assist us how they think they would want to be assisted in, but they don't ever ask us the appropriate questions. And some of those questions are, what are you going through? How can I be of service? What are you feeling? What are you thinking? These are the different ways that we can navigate and help someone through the pain and through the suffering. Because remember, we want to be there for them in the way that they need us. We don't want to be there for them in the way that we want to be there, right? So that will take some work, and that is a very humbling experience. And it shows how we can grow as a person because it lets us know that, hey, you are not alone in this. I want to help you to the best of my ability. I want to show you that your trust in me isn't misguided, isn't misplaced. I want to demonstrate that I can be all that you want me to be, because that's the true form of friendship. A friendship wouldn't put someone down when they're suffering. A friend wouldn't leave them in a difficult situation. But more importantly, a friend wouldn't make the situation worse. I think there's a lot of times where friends make the situation worse and they compound it because they come across as very selfish, right? Because they know that they can't provide the support that they need, but they don't want to come across as something that maybe can cast them in a negative light. So remember, be the type of friend that the other person needs you to be, and always understand how you can help them. So I think Lainey is joining us again. So just a few more minutes and she will be here. Lainey, let me know when you're back.
I think I'm, but the connection can be much better.
I know we can definitely hear you. I know that maybe the internet will come along, but you are here, you are back, and let me know when you are connected. So I think what's going to happen now, guys, is that she's going to work her magic a little bit. Unless you want to try, I don't know if you want to try a different device, but I can hear you. I can see you. I can't hear you now. Okay. So yes, try your phone. Go ahead. I can see you. I just can't hear you. Hold on, guys. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back, everyone, and I've sent Lainey the link, so we're going to try it a different way. But stay tuned, some technical difficulties, but that's just the life of the internet. So we're going to see if this is going to work a little bit, and she's coming along the ways.
Yeah.
There she is, everyone. Hello, Lainey. How are you doing today?
Amazing. Isn't it wonderful that we can have a challenge and find a solution?
I know. Can I tell you earlier today, the reason why I sent that email out is where I live, the entire city experienced a power outage for about 40 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was deep into the conversation, then all of a sudden, gone. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I understand your pain, but you're here now. We're both here now, and that's all that matters.
Yes, exactly. And a reminder to everyone that challenges happen, especially with technology, but in life, as we're having this summit on trauma. And the thing is just to keep going and keep reaching for a solution.
Absolutely. So, Lainey, let's jump right into it. Introduce yourself. Tell your audience, tell my audience, sorry, a little bit about who you are, of course, where they can find you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lainne Love, and I'm an award-winning spiritual psychology coach. I'm a best-selling author, and best of all, I am a very proud mama to an amazing neurodivergent son. And it is my mission, my privilege, my joy to help people to give birth to their bigger mission in life and create and nurture and leave their legacy of love, because we are all here with a purpose for a reason. And it's up to you to make sure that you do that, to do what you said you were going to do. And it's my joy to get to help support you along that journey.
Thank you so much. For those who don't know, Lainey and I connected earlier this year, I want to say.
Yeah.
Right. And it wasn't known to me, but maybe it was known to her. We actually don't live that far from each other. And she actually has assisted me in some things, which actually worked out. I didn't give you an update, so it did work out. And things are so much better between me and that person. For those who don't know, because it's probably like, what the hell are they even talking about? So I spoke to Lainey about something I was going through, and she shared that basically don't be afraid of going back to your old self because your old self was able to give you the results that you always wanted. And maybe this new version of yourself was more accommodating in ways that you don't necessarily have to be because now the outcome has changed. So, for those listening, I didn't go back to a monster of a man. Right? I just went back to understanding, okay, hey, this is what I want. This is how I was doing before. I have found success. why change it or why complicate things? So Lainey, thank you for that conversation.
It's a pleasure, really. Thank you for trusting me enough to have that with you.
Absolutely. And that's why you're here, because you're going to have some of those conversations with other people. So you mentioned trauma, because that's the theme. And you mentioned how it blocks us from certain things. So how does it block us?
Yeah, gosh, that's such an important thing to know. So yes, dive right in. If you're moving along life and you're doing all the things and you're like, why do I keep running into the same wall over and over again? I feel like I'm doing all of the things. Well, first of all, we'll get real and say probably you aren't doing all the things. So I thought I was doing all the things, but I wasn't actually like doing the actions. You know, I'd take the course, I'd do the therapy, and I would do the homework, but I wasn't really doing the actions. Like, was I every day embodying and doing the homework and practicing? No, I wasn't. I wasn't, and I did that for years until I really got it that, oh shit, I've been lying to myself the whole time. I've been selling myself short. I thought that like just showing up and, you know, participating and doing the things that was enough. But I mean, first of all, if what you're doing isn't producing the results that you want, then it's not working. Then you need to change. And you need to look at yourself, at what it is that you're doing. But also, in some respects, I couldn't change no matter what it is that I tried to do because of my trauma response. I didn't realize that that was continually blocking me. So both things are true. One is probably you're not actually doing the work and you're lying to yourself. And that's really important to get real with yourself. It's okay to need to feel witnessed in the things that you've experienced, because I know I needed that. And sometimes we hold on to our victimization or feeling sorry for ourselves because we're just really waiting for somebody to say, I see you, and I acknowledge what it is that you experienced. And then as soon as somebody does that, then it's like, okay, I can let go of that now. Somebody saw me, somebody acknowledged that I experienced that, instead of like continually brushing it off or not wanting to share it because you feel really embarrassed. You know, there's a lot of reasons why that happens. So sometimes we could just stay stuck in our story and our victimization because we just need to be witnessed. And sometimes we stay stuck because we're making excuses. And sometimes we stay stuck because that's part of the trauma that we need to heal. And how do we know the difference? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know how we know the difference. I think that we just have to look at all of the different things. Okay, what's my inner dialogue? Am I constantly like making excuses for things? Well, there you go. Do I feel like somebody's actually really heard me? I mean, that's self-examination. You have to look at that, where you gets to work with somebody else that's going to be able to sit with you and help to provide you some clear feedback as to what it might be that is blocking you. That's why it's so valuable to work with people along the way. That's why I work with coaches, I work with mentors, I work with therapists, because they see things that I can't, and they call me out when I am willing to make excuses for myself and not even noticing that that's what I'm doing. So then how can trauma keep you stuck? It just keeps you frozen. It keeps you in that loop. And my trauma response for a very long time was freezing. And I didn't know that you could change your trauma response, but you can. And now I've turned more into a fighter because I've worked a lot on all of the layers of that stuckness. So if, like me, your trauma response is to freeze, well, guess what? I can't. Like, I literally can't get up and do that thing because I am frozen. So don't tell me I just need to do it, or I just have to do this, or I have to fight. It's not I'm not capable of doing that right now until I work through this particular thing and heal it so that I can find the fire within myself. I can find the safety within myself, whatever that looks like for you, to be able to shift that response and feel like I can fight. And so that is how trauma can get in your way and keep you from achieving the goals that you want to achieve or having the success that you want to have, because that particular trauma is keeping you frozen or stuck in some capacity.
I wonder how many people look at trauma after a long period of time and they say, you know what, this is my new normal. I've lived with it for so long that they don't even remember how life was before it. And as you mentioned, it could be you fight, you freeze, or you flee. And I think the latter two are so easy to do, like than the fight, right? The freeze is like, to flee is like, okay, I don't want to make these changes. Let me run away, right? It's like you become so comfortable with it. It's like that warm blanket out of the dryer. It's hot, it's warm, it's soothing, it's comfortable. Eventually gets cold, and you're like, okay, is now this just this cold, old blanket I've had for 20 years? You know, it's the devil I know, Lainey. I don't want to know the other devil that I don't know, right? And then you get the voices telling you what you can and cannot do. So when you share that, saying that, hey, you're making excuses, there's a voice saying this, you're saying that. Why is it that so many people struggle with identifying that what they're actually doing is an excuse versus it being something else?
It's tough love. And it took me a long time because I'd get really angry, and get really defensive if somebody was telling me that. Well, you're just not doing it. You're just not doing the work. You're just making excuses. Is the results, like, what are the results of your life? Like, what is that getting you? You know, I'm pretty sure most people have heard the phrase, you know, do you want to be right, or do you want to have peace in your relationship? It's the same thing. So do you want to be right, or do you want to get the goal that you're looking to achieve in your life? So is this response, is this outlook, is this feeling that you're in, is it producing you the result that you want? No, it's not. That's why you're feeling frustrated. That's why you are looking for some kind of answer. And then, like, circle back to what I just said. Okay, well, what is it that I need right now? Because it's possible that you can turn your life around in a second, in an instant. Absolutely. And know that's possible, and know that could be you. And it's possible that you might have some steps. It's possible that it might take you a little bit of time, a lot of time. All those things are possible. And that is really specific to you and your particular journey. So what is it that I need right here? Do I just feel like nobody's heard me? Do I need somebody to just witness? Ask yourself, have some conversations with yourself. It's a wonderful thing to have a conversation with yourself. I do it all the time. Okay, what do I need right now? Is it that? Yeah, maybe it's a little bit of that. Okay, great. Find somebody that you can trust to witness yourself. Say it to yourself in a mirror. Hire a therapist. Like, there are a lot of different options there. Choose the one that you feel most comfortable with. And I would say, don't use your friends for this. Your friends, your friends aren't your therapists. And your friends are likely not going to give you the answer that you need, and for a multitude of different reasons, but that's a different conversation. And it doesn't mean that they don't love you, and it doesn't mean that they don't see you. It just means it's a different skill set. So find somebody that you can trust, a professional that you can speak with, so that you can fully feel witnessed. And then, what's your inner dialogue? When I say that to you, do you want to, like, punch me in the face? Because I did. I would get so angry, but I'm not a victim, and how dare you? And I'm not making excuses. You don't know my life. You don't know my circumstances. I don't. And I'm sure that a lot of them really, really suck. And that it can also be true that you're making excuses. We've just had Alma on before, right? She's laying in bed and she showed up. Right? So what is it in your life? Where are you, figuratively speaking, laying in bed and still choosing not to show up? And we all have that. I've got lots of areas in my life where I still need to have conversations with myself about how it is that I can show up better. It's not about perfection. It's just about being honest with yourself, because you can't change if you're not being honest with yourself, if you're not willing to look at the possibility even that maybe you're stuck somewhere and you're not being honest with yourself.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's it.
Yeah, I went through something similar with someone I dated when it came to involving friends in our relationship. And it wasn't something I wanted to do, but I made that compromise against my better judgment, maybe. Mm. And one of the worst things I think that can ever happen to someone is when they know better, but they compromise their know better for someone else, and then it bites them in the ass. Because now you have literally no one to blame but yourself. And I involve my friends, the friends of herself as well as mine, in the situation, not because I wanted to, because she wanted to. And as to your point, you begin to make excuses, right? Well, I'm doing it out of love and all this other stuff, but it's not really their business because they don't have the skill set. And a lot of times, what I found is that friends have like an ulterior motive behind why they're suggesting certain things, right? Whereas, let's say you and I, the motive would be we want to help each other. There isn't some secret clandestine method behind it, right? So when you mentioned the skill set and don't go to your friends, why do you think people go to their friends first before going to someone else to seek the type of assistance that they need?
For real? Because they don't want to pay somebody.
I said the same thing yesterday. Lainne, are you reading my mind?
Yeah, they don't want to. That's another excuse. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. Okay, that's another excuse. So again, they show up everywhere. So where is it? And you could be saying, no, but I really don't. You do, because I have not had the money. Like I've had zero, minus, lots and lots of minuses of money. And I still found the possibility. And I've also had in my life times and experiences where I really, literally didn't have the money. Like my clothes fell apart and I couldn't buy new clothes. And when I opened the cupboards, literally there was like one can of food. So look at your circumstances. Which one is your truth? Where, okay, I do have the money because I could like not buy a coffee once a week, or I could cancel my Netflix subscription, or is it that kind of like, okay, it would be tight, but I could not have money? Or is it that my clothes are falling apart and I literally have no food to eat? Okay, get real with yourself about which circumstance is which. But again, as I just said, and I'll say it again because I think it needs to be said, which one? Because they're excuses. So which team do you want to be on? Do you want to be a team? I'm going to like buckle down and actually make a change here. And I'm going to do what it takes because, oh, 1 second ago, I was just saying that I do all of these things, but actually you're not, because the minute I offer a solution, you're telling me why you can't do it. And most of the time it's money centered, but it's just really priority centered. Where are you willing / not willing to shuffle your life around and make yourself a little bit uncomfortable so that you could actually create the change that you're looking to do in your life? Are looking to cause in your life, cause change. And like I have had a lot of troubling experiences in my life. I have endured a lot of trauma, like probably a lot of people in this summit have as well. And sometimes they have been the excuse for why I haven't done things, and sometimes they've been the reason for why I propelled myself forward. So just what are you What are you using the experiences that you have had in your life as excuses to slow yourself down or reasons to propel yourself forward? Because really, that's just what they are. And I've been really, really low, as I mentioned, like financially, but emotionally, I've been really, really low. Psychologically, spiritually, I hated spirit. I was so mad at God. I felt so abandoned, so forsaken for so long. I've been through a lot of the different stages, and I understand likely I understand where you're coming from, as I'm not you, and I haven't experienced what you've experienced, but I've experienced a lot of lows. And so I can resonate with how that feels and how challenging it can be to crawl up from the gutter and keep getting hit, and keep having to repeat the pattern of crawling up from the gutter and just looking for a break. And I understand what that is, and you can still do it, and you can still look for the reasons why you can still do it, and you can invest in that, whether it's your time, your energy, or your money, so that you can ultimately have the life that you're dreaming of, that you came here to live.
And I want to add as well, because I agree with what you're saying, that there's an accountability piece, because when you go to someone that doesn't have a vested interest, right, an acquaintance or a stranger, they're going to tell you exactly what it is you have to do and why it's happening. And they may say that, okay, you've come to me with 10 issues, you're the problem in 9 of them. And that it's a difficult conversation to have when the person would tell you, okay, this is where you went wrong, this is where you're wrong, where someone else who's a friend may say that, oh no, it's the world, it's everyone else. Like, there's someone that I was talking to, and they mentioned a few of their problems, and it's a man, and he went to a young lady who was assisting him, and the advice that she gave was a little bit peculiar, only because I wouldn't say it was necessarily bad advice, because if it helps, it helps. But it was coming across as the person had a romantic interest in the person. So it was like, okay, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't be looking at these type of women. Maybe you should be looking at these type. And maybe that, you know what, if you were to find someone like this, and it's essentially describing her.
Like,
you know, you're not saying, look at me, but you're saying that here's a, you know, here's an image of this person that kind of looks like me, right? And I find that people tend to do that. And I know, I guess from the male perspective, I see more men going through it, but I hear a lot of men who will manipulate situations thinking that they're going to be helpful, but they'll manipulate the women into thinking, okay, I'm the type of person that you need to do this, or women will do the same, right? And I think that is dangerous only in the fact that this person is already experiencing trauma, and you're taking advantage of their trauma to potentially traumatize them in a different way. Have you, not maybe you have experienced it, but have you seen women go through that?
Oh, sure. On all of the ends. I've been the person on the other line trying to manipulate the person for the result that I want. I've been the person that has been on the receiving end of that. We all have. We're all human beings here. So absolutely that happens. We all have our own agendas based on our own experiences. And I think it comes for the most part from a good place, from your friends, from the people that you're looking to get the advice from. But 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, really why you're calling that person when you're looking for the advice, why we're saying don't call your friends, call a professional, is you're calling the friend, you're thinking about your friends. So you're thinking about your challenge, your problem, your obstacle, and then you're thinking about your friends, and you call the friend who's going to give you the answer that you want to hear. Right? So that isn't really like, necessarily gonna give you the best outcome. That's gonna require you to actually do something different and create change. You're gonna call the friend that's gonna tell you exactly what you want to hear so that you can stay stuck. That's why you don't call your friends. You also don't call your friends exactly because they have their own biases. They've known you for a long time and they already have an idea and a picture of who you are. And they're not necessarily seeing the potential for who you could be. They want you to stay who and how you are because they know and love you as that. And it's not necessarily that they don't want to see you succeed. It's just that's how humans work. That's how we work. We want to stay comfortable. We want to stay in our little bubble. So there's a myriad of different reasons why, don't call your friends. Call a professional if you're really, really looking to create change in your life. And you really want to find a solution when you've been running into the same problem over and over again and you're actually ready to create a solution. Find a professional, whatever that looks like, and get them. And then one step beyond that, not only find a professional, but listen to what it is that the feedback that they're giving you, see if it resonates with you, and then take the action steps. So it's one thing to just show up on the call. It's great to show up on a call and let yourself be heard. But are you doing the next step, which is embodying or integrating the work that they've asked you to do so that you could create the change that you're looking for in your life? Because probably if you're listening, you've taken the step, oh, but I've worked with a therapist or I've had a coach. And probably the missing step is that you weren't then doing the work that they asked you to do thereafter.
I wonder if that's the reason why no one calls me when it comes to my friends. They're like, Terrain's not going to tell us what I want to hear. He's going to tell us what we need to do. Because it came for me with some of my friends, right? It came across as when they would ask, because I stopped volunteering information. So I was like, okay, I didn't want to come across as that religious preacher on the corner of, well, you're Toronto, yeah, in Dundas Square, right? Yeah. I didn't want to be that guy. For those who don't know Toronto, there's this guy that stands there and he tells us the world is ending and he shouts all these religious slogans. I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be, holier than thou. But when they would ask and I would point out certain things that they would have to change, they viewed it as like an insult, or they viewed it as, or it was like you're peeling back the scab on the insecurity, right? Because it's healing and then someone's peeling it back and then has to reheal and then you peel it back some more, right? And I think for a lot of us that actually has to happen, because if your friends can't be honest with you, who do you expect to be honest with you? And you mentioned a good point when you said that they love you, they love this version of you. But I wonder, Lainey, and I'll ask you this question, would they love just as much the new, healthier version of you?
Some are going to and some aren't. And that's the thing. And that's how we end up staying stuck in our patterns and our loops. Not only our own stuff that's keeping us stuck, but the people around you. You also have to be mindful about the people. Who am I surrounding myself with? What are they reaching for? Are they looking for change? Are they who I want to be in 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, whatever that looks like? And some of them are not going to be. And that can be hard to accept for you and for them. And so when we're on the precipice of change, sometimes the people that really love us actually sabotage us because they don't want to lose us. And it's a selfish thing. And it comes from love, but it's actually not loving, right? And so that becomes learning discernment and also is another step in healing, because it's again a step of honesty.
So instead of pulling you back from the precipice, they push you over and they look down as you fall.
They want you to fall if that's been your pattern and that's what they've been on the ride of you falling, and they have constantly been there to help you up. There's a weird balance there. We all know it. It's not to diminish any people around you, your friends or your family. It's just looking at, okay, I really want to create the change here in my life. And where is it, or who are the people in my life that are going to support me through that change? Maybe none. I know I've had periods in my life where very few of the people that were surrounding me at the time were celebrating me changing and me growing. They're looking to bring me down and sabotage me at any turn. And I'm sure I've been the same to people in my life. When I was the less evolved version of myself, it's just part of being a human. But then noticing yourself and being honest with yourself, and when have you done that, and who in your life might be doing that to you, and why are you allowing that? Because at the end of the day, I know as I said, somebody does that to you. Nobody actually really does anything to you. You allow it, or you create the circumstances, and then you accept it. And yes, even in the really, really bad things, and that's another really unpopular thing, but having been mugged and abused on multiple levels, I recognize that those are things that I've created and allowed into my life. And it was easier to change once I was able to look at that and take responsibility for it.
So as we close, Lainne, touch on that about how we can help our audience or help those not to understand why they're allowing certain things to be done with them, and to understand that, yes, many of the things that you are going through, you are allowing to be done to you.
Yeah, it's many, or all, really. All we're allowing. We're allowing the good stuff, we're allowing the bad stuff. And that comes, there are many, many factors involved there. We're really, really interesting dynamic beings. We are eternal souls having a human experience. So in this life, we are coming in with all kinds of layered things, all kinds of karma from past lives or parallel lives, depending on how you want to look at that. We're bringing in our lineage, our ancestral karma. We're bringing in the mission we have for this particular life, and the challenges that we're meant to overcome, and the ways in which our soul has chosen to evolve. We're super cool beings. We are so amazing and powerful. So when you can get real to that too, like the truth of who you are, and that your experience and your life that you're having right now is influenced by all of these very many different factors, that those are the big picture factors. And then you also look at like the collective human consciousness. You look at the country that you're in. What's the consciousness of the country? What's the religious structure? What's the social structure? What's the political structure, the financial structure? All of these different structures and systems that are influencing how it is that you interact with the world, and how it is that you're interpreting the things that are happening to you. So it's very multidimensional, very multi-layered. And sometimes I can feel like, wow, that's too much. How am I supposed to navigate all of that stuff? You can, because it really just comes down to, okay, all of that amazing. I acknowledge all of that. I can make it really simple by just looking at myself. All of those really cool big things, looking at myself. What is my dream? What do I want? Okay, getting clear on that. What do you actually want? And then what are the things that are standing in the way of you getting those things? And even just answering those two questions, that can take a lot of steps, but we can simplify those things, because that's when we can start to identify what are the influences or contracts or beliefs that are blocking you from achieving the goal that you want. That's really how you get there. So it becomes actually a pretty simple process. And how you start to recognize that is recognizing what it is that you want and the results in your life, and then the emotions that you're experiencing. Because once you can move through the emotions and start to release that, then you're starting to release that built up energy that's actually creating the blocks in your life, energetic blockages, and stops, because that's all that energy is built up and it's created a blockage. Once you start to release all of that, then you're creating more flow in your life. And once you create more flow, then that allows things to happen more easily for you. And clarity, it's easier to find a lot of clarity when you don't have a lot of stuckness that's surrounding you.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Lainey, for joining us today. But before we go, once again, let my audience and everyone know where they can find you, please.
You can find me so easily. I'm so lucky. My website is Lainne, LAINNE.com. I am Lainne Love on social media, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook. You can find me, you can connect with me there. And if you are lucky and there are spaces left, you can book a free call where I will go through with you and help you to determine two things that are blocking you specifically right now, and help you to eliminate those things so you can get closer to where it is that you want to be.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Lainey. And as always, it's been a pleasure. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much for offering this to all the people that are needing a little bit of extra love.
Thank you. And you enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and we'll speak soon.
Bye-bye.